You're 1 week away from your dream wedding, 200 guests, the perfect dress, the man you love waiting at the altar. But as you walk past your parents' room, you hear voices that make your blood run cold. She'll be standing up there like the pathetic failure she's always been, my mother hissed. 200 people will finally see what we've always known. Then came my sister's laugh, sharp as broken glass. I have the bladder of red ink rigged in the bouquet, one trip, one spill, and she will look like an absolute wreck. Brandon will dump her before the cake is cut. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't scream. I didn't burst into the room and demand an explanation. That is what the old Taylor, the desperate people-pleaser, would have done. Instead, I stepped back from the door. My heels made no sound on the plush carpet of the plaza hallway. Silence is the loudest weapon I own. I swiped my keycard and slipped into my suite. It was a junior room, modest enough to fit my cover story as a struggling virtual assistant, but paid for by a shell company I controlled. I locked the deadbolt. Then I engaged the privacy latch. That was the last time Taylor the daughter existed. In the silence of that room, she evaporated. I walked into the bathroom and turned the shower on full blast. The steam began to fill the room, a white noise shield against the world. I wasn't crying. Tears are a waste of hydration. I reached into the false bottom of my carry-on bag and pulled out my laptop. It wasn't the battered laptop I used for family video calls to complain about rent prices. It was a carbon fiber fortress with biometric encryption. My fingerprint unlocked the system in 0.2 seconds. The screen didn't show a desktop background of a cat or a sunset. It showed the live data stream of Aura. $50 million in valuation, 300 employees, and one ghost founder. Me. To my parents, I was the girl who typed emails for $20 an hour. To the tech world, I was the architect of the most secure wellness platform in the hemisphere. They thought they were hunting a mouse. They had just stepped on the tail of a dragon. I opened the command terminal. I didn't hesitate. My fingers flew across the keys, executing a command I had written 6 months ago, just in case. Protocol Obsidian. It was a contingency plan designed for a hostile corporate takeover, but it worked just as well for a hostile family takeover. It froze assets. It flagged accounts. It initiated a deep dive forensic audit into every financial touchpoint associated with my name. Then, I made the call. 1 ring. That was all it took. Timothy answered. To my parents, Timothy was their trusted, slightly bumbling financial advisor who helped them manage their investments. To me, he was my head of forensic accounting, placed in their lives 2 years ago to monitor the black hole of their spending. Miss Vance, he said. His voice was clipped, professional. We are live. Execute the freeze, I said. My voice didn't shake. And Timothy? Send me the full dossier. The forgery. The theft. Everything. I want the kill shot ready by the rehearsal dinner. I hung up. I looked at myself in the mirror. The steam had fogged the glass, blurring my reflection. Good. The girl who wanted her mother to love her was gone. The CEO was in charge now, and business was about to pick up. To my family, I am background noise. I am the smudge on the lens of their perfect life. They tell their friends at the country club that I'm finding myself, which is code for unemployed and embarrassing. They think I live in a studio apartment because I can't afford better. They think I wear minimal makeup and simple clothes because I've given up on trying to be beautiful. They see a woman who types emails for $20 an hour and eats instant noodles for dinner. They are looking at a mirage. The truth is, I don't wear designer labels because I don't need to advertise my net worth. I don't live in a penthouse because I value privacy over prestige. And I don't work for a boss. I am the boss. Aura wasn't just a lucky break. It was a calculated crusade. I didn't build a $50 million empire to buy yachts or private islands. I built it to clean up the mess my parents left behind. David and Sarah Vance aren't just social climbers, they are financial vampires. They have spent 40 years borrowing money they never intended to pay back. I grew up answering the door to weeping neighbors who had trusted my father with their retirement funds, only to watch him buy a new Mercedes while they lost their homes. I grew up watching my mother charm free services out of contractors and then badmouth them when the bill came due. The shame of their greed was the fuel for my ambition. So, I became the cleaner. I used my first million to anonymously pay back the 3 families my father bankrupted in the 90s. I set up shell corporations to settle the debts they walked away from. I wanted the name Vance to mean something other than theft. But the biggest line item on my personal ledger wasn't the neighbors, it was them. For the last 5 years, my parents haven't paid a single dime toward the mortgage on their Connecticut estate. They think they're financial geniuses who negotiated a brilliant deferment plan. They brag about how the bank loves them. They have no idea that the bank actually sold the note to a holding company called Obsidian Trust. I own Obsidian Trust. I have been paying their mortgage, their property taxes, and their insurance every single month. I did it to keep a roof over their heads. I did it because, despite everything, I still desperately wanted them to be the parents I deserved. I thought if I kept them safe, if I removed the financial pressure, they might finally stop the grifting. They might finally look at me. Instead, they took the money I saved them and poured it into Jessica. They funded her lifestyle blog that gets 12 views a day. They bought her the camera equipment, the wardrobe, the trips to Tulum. They call her the star. They call me the cautionary tale. They sit at the dinner table, eating food bought with the equity I preserved, and laugh about how I need to get my life together. They are standing on a platform I built, holding a hammer, getting ready to smash my knees. They think I'm weak because I'm quiet. They don't understand that in business, the silent partner is usually the one with the controlling interest. They want to expose me as a failure? Fine. I'll show them exactly what success looks like. I just hope they enjoy the view from the street. People ask me why I stayed. They ask why a woman who can negotiate multi-million-dollar acquisitions without blinking would invite the very people who have spent a lifetime dismantling her self-esteem to her wedding. It is a logical question. In business, if an asset is toxic, you liquidate it, you cut your losses. But family is not a business, it is a cult. For years, I told myself I was being the bigger person. I told myself that my silence was a form of dignity. But that was a lie. I was trapped in the invisible chain of the survivor. It is a prison without bars, built on the desperate, childlike hope that if I just performed perfectly enough, if I just made myself small enough, they would finally see me. I thought if I saved them from bankruptcy, if I quietly fixed their mistakes, the transaction would eventually balance out. I thought I could buy their love with my competence. I didn't understand that to a narcissist, a savior is just a servant with a better title. By hiding my success, I wasn't protecting myself. I was enabling their delusion. I played the role of the struggling freelancer because it made Jessica feel big. I dimmed my own light, so my mother wouldn't have to squint. I accepted their pity because it was the only form of attention they were capable of giving. Tonight, sitting in the dark of my hotel suite, the chain snapped. I realized that my ordinary life wasn't a disguise, it was a cage. I had spent 29 years auditing my own behavior, looking for the error that made me unlovable. But the books were cooked from the start. This wasn't about love, it was about power. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for their approval. I was looking for a return on my investment. And I was going to collect it with interest. The rehearsal dinner was a masterclass in psychological warfare. We were at a bistro in the West Village. The kind of place where the menu has no prices. And the lighting is designed to hide cosmetic surgery scars. My mother, Sarah, held court at the head of the table, radiating the fragile superiority of a woman who knows her credit cards are maxed out. Jessica stood up to give a toast. She was wearing a dress that cost more than my supposed annual salary. She raised her glass of champagne, the bubbles catching the light. To Taylor, she said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. For finding a man like Brandon who doesn't care about material things. It is so brave of you to stick to your budget dress, sweetie. It really shows your authentic self. The table laughed. It was a polite, high society titter, but it hit me like a physical blow. Brandon squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back, a silent signal. Wait. Hold the line. Later, my mother cornered me near the restrooms. She gripped my arm with fingers like talons. "You need to sign the prenup David drafted," she hissed. "We need to make sure the family assets are protected." I almost laughed. The family assets were a myth I had been subsidizing for half a decade. But I nodded. I played the part of the obedient daughter one last time. I let them think they had me cornered. I let them think I was the sheep. I went back to my suite at midnight. Timothy was waiting for me. He looked out of place in the opulent room, his briefcase resting on the velvet armchair. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He opened the file. "It's worse than we thought, Taylor," he said. He laid the documents out on the coffee table. They were bank records from a trust fund my grandmother Eleanor had left for me. I had never touched it. I wanted to save it for a rainy day. "The account is empty," Timothy said. "Withdrawals began 6 months ago." I looked at the transfer slips. $95,000, gone. And there, at the bottom of the authorization forms, was my signature. Except I hadn't signed it. "It's a forgery," I said. My voice was calm, but the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "My mother forged my signature. They used the money to pay for Jessica's brand launch," Timothy explained. "The photographers, the bot followers, the PR agency. And the rest. The rest went to the vendors for tomorrow. They used your own money to pay for the ink that is going to ruin your dress." I stared at the paper. This wasn't just bullying anymore. This wasn't just toxic family dynamics. This was a felony. They had crossed the line from cruelty into criminality. They had stolen grand larceny amounts from the daughter they called a failure to prop up the daughter they called a star. "Do you want me to call the police?" Timothy asked. "Not yet," I said. I picked up the forged document. It felt heavy in my hand. Like a weapon. "The police can wait until after the cake is cut. I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel victorious. I want them to smile for the cameras." I looked at Timothy. "Prepare the screens." The ceremony was a blur of white roses and holding my breath. I walked down the aisle looking my parents in the eye. They smiled at me, dabbing fake tears with linen handkerchiefs. To the guests, they looked like proud parents letting go of their daughter. To me, they looked like sharks circling a raft. They thought I was walking toward my humiliation. I knew I was walking toward their execution. The reception was held in the grand ballroom. It was a sea of crystal chandeliers and old money. The air smelled of expensive perfume and anticipation. I stood by the head table, my hand in Brandon's. He squeezed my fingers. It was the signal. "Ready." Jessica approached the microphone for the maid of honor speech. She was holding a glass of red wine, a very large glass. It was filled to the brim with a vintage Cabernet, dark as blood. I watched her knuckles turn white around the stem. She wasn't nervous about the speech. She was nervous about the aim. "To my sister," she began, her voice trembling with faux emotion, "who always, oh, it was a bad performance." She feigned a stumble on the hem of her dress. She lunged forward. The glass left her hand. The red wine arced through the air in slow motion. The crowd gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the room. The liquid hit me dead center. It splashed across the bodice of my white gown and cascaded down the silk skirt. Jessica covered her mouth with her hands, her eyes wide with mock horror. My mother stood up, ready to rush over and play the consoling martyr while the photographers snapped the money shot of the ruined bride. But the wine didn't soak in. It beat it up. It rolled off the fabric like mercury on glass. It pooled on the floor at my feet, in a dark, wet puddle, leaving the dress pristine. Not a single drop stained the fiber. The room went dead silent. Jessica stared at the dress, her mouth hanging open. She looked at the empty glass, then back at me. She couldn't process the physics of it. She didn't know that 3 days ago, my R&D team had treated the fabric with a proprietary hydrophobic nanocoating we developed for our high-end athletic wear. It repels liquid at a molecular level. It is armor, masquerading as silk. I didn't flinch. I didn't scream. I stepped over the puddle of wine, my white heels clicking on the hardwood. I took the microphone from my sister's trembling hand. "Thank you, Jessica," I said. My voice was steady. It echoed off the vaulted ceiling. That was a lovely toast. But I think we're done with the performance. I looked up at the audiovisual booth and nodded. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. The giant screens behind the head table, which were supposed to show a montage of my childhood, flickered to life. But there were no baby pictures. There were no graduation photos. Instead, a bank statement filled the 20-foot screen. The header read, Eleanor Vance Trust. The balance read, 0. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Then, the slide changed. It showed a transfer authorization form. The date was 6 months ago. The amount was $95,000. And highlighted in red was the signature at the bottom, Taylor Vance. Next to it, a handwriting analysis report flashed up, declaring the signature a forgery with 99% certainty. My mother froze. She looked like a statue made of ash. My father dropped his fork. The clatter rang out like a gunshot. For 29 years, I have been the invisible daughter, I said into the microphone. I walked toward the center of the room. You told me I was a failure. You told me I was lucky to be invited to my own wedding. But you didn't invite me because you love me. You invited me because you needed a victim. The screen changed again. It showed a chain of text messages between Jessica and my mother. Mom, make sure she stands under the main light. We want everyone to see the stain. Jessica, don't worry, I'll make her look like trash. Brandon will dump her tonight. The gasp from the audience wasn't polite this time. It was horrified. Brandon stepped up beside me, his face hard as stone. He looked at my parents. They were shrinking in their seats, looking small and withered under the glare of the projector. But there is one more thing you should know, I said. I turned to Jessica. She was shaking now, tears of panic tracking through her foundation. You've been applying for a sponsorship for your lifestyle brand for 6 months. You've been begging for a meeting with the CEO of Aura. You wanted to know why you kept getting rejected. I signaled the booth. The screen changed to the Aura logo. A sleek, golden A. Then, my face appeared on the screen. It was my corporate headshot from the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, the one I had kept hidden from them. I am the CEO of Aura, I said. And Jessica? Your application is denied. The words hung in the air. Jessica collapsed into a chair, sobbing. But it wasn't the dress or the sponsorship that broke them. It was the exposure. I watched my parents. For years, their cruelty had felt like strength. They had loomed over me like giants. But as I looked at them now, stripped of their secrets, I realized they weren't strong, they were hollow. This is the delusion of power, of the empty wallet. They had built their entire identity on the appearance of wealth and the subjugation of their children. They needed me to be small, so they could feel big. They needed to steal my money, because without it, they were just two bankrupt narcissists in rented formal wear. When the money is revealed to be stolen, the mask falls. They didn't look like parents anymore. They looked like defendants. The side doors opened. 4 officers from the NYPD entered the ballroom. They didn't make a scene. They walked straight to the head table. Timothy had filed the charges an hour ago. Grand larceny, forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud. David and Sarah Vance, the officer said. Please come with us. My father didn't fight. He looked at me one last time. There was no anger in his eyes, only a terrifying emptiness. He had lost his audience, so he had ceased to exist. As they were let out, the room was silent. I looked at the crowd. I saw shock. I saw awe. But I didn't want their pity. The money that was stolen from me will be recovered, I said. But it won't be going back into my account. Tonight, I am launching the Eleanor Fund. It is a nonprofit dedicated to providing financial literacy and legal resources for survivors of financial abuse. Every cent my parents took will go to helping people escape families just like them. This is the justice of the sower. Revenge is just burning down the house. Justice is using the ashes to fertilize the soil. I wasn't just punishing them. I was building a legacy on top of their failure. I was taking the pain they caused and turning it into power for someone else. I put the microphone down. I didn't stay for the cake. I took Brandon's hand. And we walked down the center aisle. Past the stunned guests. Past the remnants of the life I used to live. We walked out the front doors of the plaza and into the cold, clean air of the New York night. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had built my own table, and for the first time in my life, I was full. If you believe that your value isn't defined by your family's opinion, but by what you build with your own hands, hit that like button. Share this story with the black sheep in your life who needs to know they are actually the GOAT.